They were with someone else. Not because you were not enough. Not because you were easy to forget. But because something inside them was not ready to face what was real. And now they carry a message they can no longer hide or push down. What they want to say is not simple. It is not comfortable either. Because while they were giving their time to someone else, part of their heart never fully left you. That truth has become too heavy for them to deny. Have you ever felt a bond never truly ended, even when everything outside of it looked over? Even when distance, silence, and time tried to close the door, something still felt open. That is where they have been, not fully in the past and not fully free from it, but living in that quiet place where truth was delayed, not erased. Real connection does not vanish that easily. It waits, it stays, and sooner or later it asks to be seen for what it really was. Stay with me, because this matters more than it first appears. They chose what felt safe instead of what felt true. They moved toward what was familiar instead of what was calling them from deep inside. They held on to what was easier to manage instead of what could have changed them in a deep and lasting way. In doing that, they told themselves comfort was peace. But comfort is not always peace. Sometimes it is only fear wearing a calm face. Even while they stayed where things felt controlled, where emotions asked little from them, and where nothing pushed them too far, a quiet part of them kept asking the same question. What if they left something real behind? What if the thing they walked away from was the one thing that asked for courage, honesty, and their full heart? Once that question settled inside them, it did not disappear. It did not fade away in a soft and harmless way. It stayed with them in the quiet hours, in the still evenings, in the pauses between words, in those moments when there was no noise left to cover what they really felt. The feeling did not beg for attention. It simply refused to be ignored. It remained steady, almost silent, but always there, reminding them that something inside had been left unfinished for too long. No matter how hard they tried to move forward, that awareness followed them. It sat behind their choices. It shaped how they felt about everyday life. And little by little, the life they chose began to feel manageable but small, simple but empty in places they could no longer explain away. They started to notice how little life was asking from them, how routine had taken the place of growth, how they kept parts of their real self hidden just to keep things easy. They avoided deeper questions. They avoided stronger emotions. They avoided anything that might force them to face who they really were underneath the surface. And over time that created a strange distance inside them. They were living their life, but not fully inside it. They were present, but not deeply awake. And that quiet distance became harder and harder to ignore. If this is touching something real in you, keep listening, because the next part explains why they could not fully let go, even while trying to build something somewhere else. What they had with the other person may have looked stable from the outside, but it did not carry the same depth, meaning, or emotional weight. It did not reach the same place in them. What they shared with you had another kind of presence. It went deeper, it stayed longer, and things that truly matter do not vanish just because someone walks away for a while. They remain in the background of the mind, quiet but alive, waiting to be acknowledged without force. They do not scream for attention. They do not create drama every day. But they do not disappear either. And after enough time passes, those feelings begin to rise again, not as chaos, but as a steady reminder that something important once lived there. At some point they stopped pretending to themselves, not in one dramatic moment, not in some sudden movie scene of perfect clarity. It happened slowly, honestly, uncomfortably. They had to admit they were never fully alive in the place they chose. Something important had always been missing, even when they tried not to look at it too closely. They saw that no matter how much they told themselves they had moved on, a part of them was still emotionally unfinished with you. That truth did not come gently. It came with quiet honesty, the kind that gives no room for excuses. If you have ever felt that a connection stayed alive beneath the silence, even while they were with someone else, then you know this feeling is not loud. It is persistent. it keeps returning. And what they came to understand was this: they never truly gave that connection a fair chance, not because it lacked value, but because it required bravery they did not yet have. It asked them to be open without armor. It asked them to risk rejection, to feel deeply without knowing how things would end, to step into a space where they could lose control, be changed, and be seen in a way they were not prepared for at that time. That kind of courage is rare, and instead of stepping toward it, they stepped away. They chose safety over growth. They chose certainty over truth. Even while some part of them knew what they were leaving behind, they kept moving in the easier direction. But now that awareness carries a message they could not speak before. It is not polished. It is not perfect. It is not asking for pity. It is simply the truth, sitting inside them with a weight they can no longer deny. They understand now what you represented in their life. They see that what they were really avoiding was not you, but the parts of themselves they were afraid to face, and that changes everything. It changes how they see the past. It changes how they understand their choices. It changes how they define what truly mattered. This is not a loud transformation. It is a deep one, a lasting one. Because once a person clearly sees their own avoidance, they cannot go back to pretending they never saw it. They cannot return to that old illusion and live there comfortably again. Whether they reach out or stay silent, something in them has already shifted for good. The false story they were living has cracked open, and when that illusion breaks, it does two things at once. It brings pain, and it brings clarity. Keep watching, because what comes next is the part most people never say out loud, and yet it is often the most honest piece of the entire story. What you need to hold on to more than anything is this: none of this was ever proof that you lacked value. None of it was a statement about your worth. It was always a reflection of their emotional readiness, their fear, and their ability to face what they felt at that point in life. You were not replaced by someone better. That was never the truth. You crossed paths with someone who did not yet have the strength to meet you where you stood. And now they are living inside the result of their own choices. They carry the weight of what they delayed, what they avoided, and what they left unresolved. Whether they say it directly or not, that is the real impact for them. Not some dramatic return, not an instant confession, but a truth that keeps settling deeper into their awareness with time. You were real, and real connections leave a mark that convenience, distraction, and denial cannot erase. They want you to understand this clearly. Their distance was not about your worth. Their hesitation was not about your value. Their inconsistency came from fear, not from not knowing what you meant to them. And now that fear has been faced, it has left them more awake, more honest, and more aware of the damage caused by how they handled something that mattered. They carry a clarity now that feels heavy. It cannot be softened with excuses anymore. In that clarity they can see what they ignored, what they postponed, and what cannot easily be changed. They see the effect their silence had. They see what their avoidance did to someone who deserved full presence, honesty, and real effort. And that understanding does not bring comfort. It brings accountability, quiet, sharp, lasting. This is not a request to go back. It is not a plea to return things to how they were. It is not even a demand for another chance. It is simply an admission, a quiet truth that usually comes only after reflection and inner growth. They now see the courage you showed just by being open, by asking for honesty, by refusing to settle for mixed signals and half-hearted effort. And in seeing that, they feel two things at once: respect and regret. Respect for your truth. Regret for not being brave enough to stand at that same level when it mattered most. That regret is not dramatic. It does not always show on the surface, but it stays with them. It lives in late-night thoughts, in quiet moments when distractions are gone, in memories that return without warning. It reminds them of the chances they let pass, the honesty they avoided, the connection they did not protect when they still had the choice. This feeling does not shout, it does not create scenes, but it also does not disappear. It stays under the surface, steady and alive. shaping how they now see the past. And what they most want you to understand is that this is not only about missing comfort or familiar energy. It goes much deeper than that. It is about finally understanding what a real bond feels like, and realizing that something genuine cannot simply be swapped out for something easier. Through every decision they made, part of them remained aware of you, aware of what they were not saying, aware of what they were not facing. That awareness never fully left. It only grew stronger until it became something they could no longer silence. If this is hitting home, stay a little longer, because the next part reveals what this kind of realization actually does to a person over time. They are not asking for forgiveness. They are not trying to control your decision. They are simply offering the truth of what they now understand, something they could not express before. This truth does not come dressed up. It does not perform. It does not try to rewrite the past. It comes from someone who finally sees what was in front of them the whole time, and now carries that understanding with full responsibility. They are no longer running from the emotions they used to avoid. They are no longer splitting their attention and hiding behind silence. They have had to look directly at their hesitation, their distance, and their fear of being vulnerable. And through that process, something became very clear to them. The person they struggled to fully show up for was always you. That realization now carries real emotional weight. It has changed the way they understand connection, truth, and presence. They are different now, in awareness, even if the past itself cannot be changed. Even if they never act on what they feel, the understanding will remain, because now they do not see you as an option or as something replaceable. They see you as a meaningful bond they were not ready for when it first arrived. And that truth will follow them into every future experience where emotional depth appears again. What happens next is no longer guided by confusion on their side. It becomes about conscious choice, your clarity, your ability to stay grounded in your own truth and self-respect. Take a breath here, feel that, because this is where everything shifts. You already know what feels right for you. You already know what kind of love, honesty, and effort you deserve. And when you hold both their growth and your own in the same view, the next step becomes clearer, calmer, stronger, not rushed, not driven by old pain, but led by self-respect. On the surface, someone may look fully committed somewhere else. They may seem focused in another direction, fully occupied by another life, another connection, another story. But emotionally, a part of them can still remain tied to something they never fully understood or resolved. This is not always about simple betrayal. It is often about the deeper and more complicated nature of attachment, fear, avoidance, and growth. Fear plays a bigger role in human choices than most people realize. Fear of closeness, fear of vulnerability, fear of losing control, fear of facing an emotional truth that could change everything. Those fears can quietly shape decisions while a person still believes they are acting from logic or stability. In those moments they may move toward other people, not because of deeper love, but because of comfort, distraction, or the need to escape what feels too real. Yet the person they were deeply connected to stays present in some part of their inner world. Even if they never speak about it, that presence continues through memories, comparisons, and thoughts they do not always invite but cannot stop. Regret becomes part of the process when someone avoids truth for too long. It usually arrives in silence, in reflection, in those empty spaces where there are no more distractions left to protect them from their own mind. And when it comes, it is not just about missing someone. It is about seeing the choices they made, the fear behind those choices, and the chance they failed to honor when it was still in front of them. That understanding does not arrive quickly. It builds, it deepens, and once fully seen, it changes how a person moves forward. So if you have been waiting for clarity, listen closely, because the deepest answers often arrive long after the surface story has ended. This kind of regret is powerful because it forces a person into accountability. It brings them face to face with humility and real inner change. It does not let them escape through denial forever. It asks them to look directly at the impact of what they did and what their choices created. But growth is not happening only on one side. While one person is learning to face fear, accept responsibility, and understand emotional truth more clearly, the other person is changing too. You are changing too. You are learning stronger boundaries. You are learning to protect your peace. You are learning that self-respect matters more than temporary attention. This creates a powerful shift, because by the time one person finally gains clarity, the other may already be standing in a stronger, wiser, and calmer place. That matters. It means any future connection, if it ever happens, will not be built on confusion, emotional need, or uncertainty. It will have to come from conscious choice, self-awareness, and maturity. The dynamic changes because neither person remains the same. Even when the memory of the bond is still alive, both people are moving, growing, and becoming different inside. And that difference protects against repeating the same old pattern. It means any future contact has to be real, or it has no place at all. Another truth becomes clear here. Emotional presence is not the same as physical closeness. A person can stand next to someone every day and still feel emotionally tied to what was never fully resolved before. That kind of presence is quiet. It appears in passing thoughts, sudden memories, private comparisons, and unspoken emotional echoes that refuse to go away. It does not always show on the outside, but inside, it keeps shaping what they feel and how they understand their own life. This is why their outer behavior can seem so different from their inner reality. There is often a quiet gap between what they show and what they truly feel, not always because they want to deceive, but because they themselves are still catching up to the truth inside them. And while that is happening, the person who once asked for honesty and real presence is not standing still. You are not frozen in that old moment. You are becoming more grounded, more aware, more certain of your value. You are learning to trust your own instincts again, to listen when something feels off, to move forward without begging for clarity from people who keep choosing confusion. That matters more than you know, because if reconnection ever happens, it should not come from your loneliness, your waiting, or your old wounds. It should come from a place of balance, strength, and clear understanding. Shared growth is what makes that possible. It protects both people from repeating the same mistakes. It allows any future interaction to be based on awareness instead of emotional chaos, and on maturity instead of instability. In the end, this story is not only about someone realizing they could not fully leave you behind. It is also about you realizing you no longer need mixed signals to know your worth. You no longer need someone else's confusion to define your value. You know what real effort feels like. You know what honesty sounds like. You know what presence looks like, and that changes everything. So as this truth becomes clear, remember this part well. Their awakening does not pause your life. Their realization does not put your growth on hold. You keep moving. You keep choosing peace. You keep becoming the version of yourself that no longer accepts less than what is real. In the end, everything returns to awareness, growth, and truth. What was once hidden is now visible. What was once avoided is now understood. They have had to face their fear, their hesitation, and the choices that shaped this story. And because of that, the way they see everything has changed. At the same time, you have grown into someone who no longer depends on uncertainty to feel secure in your worth. You have learned to protect your peace, to trust your inner voice, to stand in your self-respect without needing outside validation. What this creates is not just a story of return or loss. It creates a clear understanding of what was real and what it required from both people. You represented something genuine, something meaningful, something that asked for courage to hold on to. That truth has now been recognized, even if it came later than expected. But your path does not stop for someone else's delayed understanding. You continue forward with clarity, strength, and a deeper awareness of what you deserve and what you will never again accept. So let this settle in you. Stay grounded in your truth. Let your choices come from clarity, not old emotions. Trust the growth you have earned. What is meant to align with you will meet you with the same honesty, presence and effort you have always carried. And what cannot meet you there will fall away on its own. No force needed, no chasing needed, just truth, just peace, just self-respect. And if this message spoke to something deep in you, hold on to the part that touched you most. Because sometimes the real closure is not in what they finally understand. It is in what you finally refuse to forget about your own worth.